And our meeting tonight is now open for sharing testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Janet from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Day Day, for the readings tonight, and I'm so grateful for this healing service. I recently received a call from a relative who told me she had not been to visit her sister, who was in the hospital for a week, and she felt very bad about it, was so fearful to go. She said she never liked visiting anyone in the hospital, but it was even more fearful at this time. I told her if it was the right thing for her to do, she could do it. And I mentioned to her that I was once told to think of a hospital as hospitality. A few minutes after we talked, she contacted me to say she had spoken to her mother, and her mother said the hospital would not allow her to visit. Her mother said that she was the only one that could be there. No other relatives or guests were allowed. She was so elated at this news. I mentioned to her that God was working His purpose out. And she said that's exactly what she told her husband. And she added, "Our God is an awesome God." I also told her that her love for her sister outweighed the anxious feelings she was having, and that love for her sister was rewarded. This experience is yet another wonderful proof of God's constant protection for all of His children. Words cannot adequately express my gratitude for this Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, for my practitioners' loving guidance, and for all of the many blessings my family has received and continues to receive from our awesome God. Thank you so much, and love to you all.
Thank you. Dave from Florida, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I know there's been a lot of bad press about Christian Science floating around the internet, claiming that it doesn't heal. And I just want to say that I have been in it most of my life and have had and seen many wonderful healings. One in particular was the healing my father had of the last stages of cancer. I know I related this before over a year ago, but I think it's worth repeating. He was a school teacher and was given medical leave because of his condition. The school doctor had examined him and sent him home, felt he had no chance. He worked with a few practitioners and also went up to a Christian Science nursing home in Boston known as the BA. But it was not until he called the practitioner in this church, Mrs. Evans, and came back home from Boston at her request that the healing started. She would visit him almost every night and sometimes brought in meals. He'd been totally bedridden and was so weak he couldn't walk. Within a few weeks, he began to show progress and was able to get out of bed, and I will never forget the day he was able to walk down the stairs. It was a monumental event. Within no time, he was back to work. The school doctor couldn't believe it and actually attested to the fact that it was Christian Science and nothing else that healed my father. Christian Science, the way it was and is taught in this church, does heal, and I'm grateful to be a member here. And thank you, Day Day, for those readings.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening. The latest publication, Love is the Liberator, from our church is absolutely outstanding. Those who worked on it really did put the big flower pot into the little flower pot. I thought the choices of articles from past years blended wonderfully for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen from California, go ahead.
Good evening, and I also like to thank Day for the readings tonight. They were wonderful. Last Friday night, standing up after dinner, I felt a great deal of pain in my hips. It was very painful to walk and to bend over. Before retiring, I knew I could not go to sleep while believing that this pain was going on in the body or in my hips. With the support of my practitioner and all that is available on the church's website to help one in the learning the correct way to think and live as a Christian Scientist, I have been learning how to turn from the body and seek God or truth as my only comfort. I know now that when a lie of belief tries to assert itself, it is nothing but animal magnetism, or the suggestion of a power or presence apart from God. So it and its claims are nothing. But I am the one giving it life, if I give it any reality. Mary Baker Eddy says in Science and Health on page 395, quote, "It is mental quackery to make disease a reality, to hold it as something seen and felt, and then to attempt its cure through mind," unquote. I had to clear my thinking and hold to the truth, the right idea about which this was a lie. I also have been working with a statement from Dorothy Reeke's article, The Truth About Body, where she says, quote, "All of our troubles come from worrying, fretting, and stewing about the physical nobody, which we are not, instead of appreciating the spiritual somebody, which we really are. Let us refuse, absolutely refuse to be mortal, material, physical nobodies," unquote. I rejoiced that I was now and always have been a spiritual, perfect somebody in the kingdom of heaven, and refused to be taken in by what I seemed to be feeling. I went to bed and felt slightly better the next morning. But after the Bible study, I knew I had to just keep claiming that I was immortal, spiritual, and perfect as my Creator, God, despite the discomfort. As I rejected all temptations to believe that what I was feeling had any reality, I could feel the pain and discomfort start to lessen. Within an hour or so, as I continued to move about the house, doing what I needed to do, I felt freer and freer, until by lunchtime, all pain and stiffness was gone. I am so grateful to be learning to have more faith in the truth that I am knowing, and let that operate without letting fear, doubt, or discouragement get in the way. I am so grateful to Christ Jesus, our way shower, and to Mary Baker Eddy, the promised revelator to this age, who through her discovery of Christian Science revealed for all mankind that the power of the truth that Christ Jesus taught and lived is as much here today as it was over 2,000 years ago. I am so grateful to be here tonight and to be a part of Plainfield's worldwide membership. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry from California, go ahead.
Thank you. As was read tonight from Science and Health, to those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings. This is my favorite statement of Mrs. Eddy's. I claim it for myself every morning and then work to magnify even the smallest good in my day. I work to magnify it big time, no matter what is going on around me. It had been a great challenge to do this. To acknowledge it is one thing, but to magnify it was the work. To hold it in thought and enlarge it, allow it to grow from what seemed was a little good to God's great good. And then the other morning, one blessing after the other, in almost constant succession, began to happen with no effort on my part. And with each one came an overwhelming feeling of gratitude that I am loved, that God is good. It was the constant succession of blessings, one right after the other, all morning, that gave me no doubt. It is what I needed, that I did not have to doubt ever that God, good, is ever-present love, from good to good to good to good, effortless, ever-present love. That morning was a big morning of blessings for me and came with a great message. And now, magnifying the good every day, no matter how small, takes no effort. Again, from Mrs. Eddy, to those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings. For this, I am so very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida, go ahead.
Tonight, I just want to give thanks for our Bible study sessions and to those members who unselfishly volunteer to moderate them and then prayerfully research the Bible verses that God directs them to choose. Several years ago, I remember praying to God for a Bible study class that I might attend here in Naples. I tried to go to one, but all the attendees did was gossip about their ailments, so I left. Then I tried looking online at various Bible study groups and was unable to find any that were inspired and spiritually uplifting. All I found were ones based on human intellectualism, dry and loveless. Then my husband and I came back to Plainfield Church, and I was so grateful to discover that they were holding Bible study sessions, and that these sessions were based on the teaching of Mrs. Eddy's pure Christian Science. But just as important, they met a great need for me of Christian fellowship, because previously my Saturday mornings were often tough for me to get through. I can't be grateful enough for this church and all the good it provides. I'm grateful for the loving help I'm receiving from practitioner and for this beautiful healing service tonight. And healing it certainly is, because before the service began, I was feeling nauseous and heavy-headed. But sometime during the middle of the readings, all those symptoms left. I'm so grateful to be here, and thank God for Mary Baker Eddy for discovering Christian Science.
Thank you. Dale from Virginia, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the readings on following our Father from glory unto glory. It really is from glory to glory as we trust in the Lord with all our heart and we see wonderful things happen in our lives. I've had many healings in Christian Science over the years with help from a practitioner or through my own prayer. Each time I feel closer to God and confident in His care. I'm very grateful for the teachings in this independent Christian Science church, because thought is always turned to the real spiritual man who is at one with God. It's on this basis that we let go of false beliefs and find, as was said in the round table on Sunday, that we wake up to find that the problem was never real. I've always loved the statement in Science and Health by Mary Baker Eddy, quote, "Become conscious for a single moment that life and intelligence are purely spiritual, neither in or of matter, and the body will then utter no complaints. If suffering from a belief in sickness, you will find yourself suddenly well." End quote. I experienced this recently after dealing with a shoulder problem for several weeks, not being able to move my arms certain ways or hold any weight in my hand, even a cell phone. It became clear to me that this had nothing to do with God's perfect spiritual child, and that as God's child, I could express my freedom. This whole time I did nothing to baby the condition or treat it in any material way. I just turned to God to show me what was real and strove to be witness to Him. Overnight, the condition just faded away, and I was perfectly free. That was a month ago, and it has remained so. I am very grateful for the lessons here to be awake to the truth of being for the glory of God. Let me add my gratitude for the September issue of Love is the Liberator. We are truly blessed to recognize who and what is governing us, that we are self-governed and guided rightly by our Maker, who is the only governor. The articles in the magazine are very helpful in this election season. Thank you for this service tonight.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. This week I've been reading from Science and Health First Edition, written when Mrs. Eddy was Mary Baker Glover. There are so many interesting and precious surprises there, not the least of which is the awesome, quote, spiritual signification of the Lord's Prayer, unquote, which I don't remember reading or hearing before. I highly recommend both the prayer and the book. It is through Plainfield that I even know about it, and I thank you. I needed it in a different form and found a free PDF copy yesterday at mbeinstitute.org. Good night.
Thank you. Tara from New Mexico, go ahead.
I'm so grateful for this virtual church that reaches all of us who listen from all over the world, for the Plainfield practitioners who work with us to grow in grace, understanding, and daily practice, and for the incredible wealth of reading and listening material on the website. The other night, I woke up feeling nauseous and uncomfortable, and the first thought that came to me was of other similar experiences. Now, each time I worked through those situations through prayer and radical reliance on truth, but the memories that came were not of those healings, but of the discomfort that preceded the healings. And I knew that was just an error trying to call itself reality. So I began thinking about what my Plainfield practitioner would say if I was talking to her. And I knew she would say, 1 + 1 = 2. The world might be screaming 1 + 1 = 49, but are you going to listen to that? And that made me remember a time about a decade ago when I'd been at a hotel with apparent symptoms of food poisoning. And I'd been instantaneously healed when I'd used that exact same idea. I'd literally said 1 + 1 = 2. And to me, that means God is good plus God is all equals good is all. Therefore, anything that is not good cannot be real. And as I was saying that, I asked myself, do you believe that or don't you? And I said, of course I believe that. And like a light switch turning off, the extreme discomfort was gone in an instant. So the other night, I knew that this was just a rerun of some old show I didn't need to watch anymore. It was nothing clamoring to be thought of as something. And as I was praying to really know that, I realized that I'd read the news right before I'd gone to sleep, and it had disturbed my thinking. So it came to me all of a sudden that I should read this week's watch. And it ends with these 2 sentences. We identify ourselves with what we believe to be real. To see error as real is to identify ourselves with it. I realized that I'd accepted what I'd heard in the news as real and then had identified myself with it, and this was the discomfort I was feeling. Now I had the opportunity to reject that lie and claim my true identity as never separate from God, good, truth, love. So I did. And instead of discomfort, God and I had a wonderful little exchange, and I woke up to have a wonderfully productive day the next day. am so grateful for the daily practice and expectation of good I am learning here at Plainfield, and for the wonderful readings tonight and all the testimonies tonight and at all of these Wednesday meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I am very grateful for all I am learning here about Christian Science and for all the blessings it has brought into my life. It occurred to me today that many things that I used to be absolutely certain about have largely been proven wrong, or at least outgrown through my study here. And things I was uncertain about are now coming into focus. I used to be certain that my life was almost completely meaningless, and started to think any good I did was by accident. I was convinced that people were better off if I wasn't around. I was sure that there was no way forward and no hope. Conversely, I was pretty uncertain whether God existed. I was unsure if there was hope for the world at large. And I was filled with fear and doubt about almost everything. Both of those lists were definitely longer, but I'm sure that gets the point across. Since coming to Plainfield, and with practitioner support, I've been able to put this science into practice enough to prove to myself that God does exist, there is hope, and that no one is meaningless. I feel like I've been slowly burning this big book of malpractice that wrong thinking had written for me as though it was my autobiography. It's so wonderful to give that past to God and to have my life healed so completely. I am very grateful to be a member of this church and to be here tonight. Thank you. And also, I have a testimony from Melissa.
Thank you so much for the wonderful readings and for all the work that goes into our meetings behind the scenes. I look forward to the testimonies, the lesson, the roundtable, and our church each week, and the website on a daily basis. I am filled with love and gratitude to all the Plainfield church members who help bring these to us. I am so grateful for the healing my teenage son experienced from a perceived back injury and its repercussions starting 2 years ago. In hindsight, it was a wonderful series of healings that moved us as a family through many stages. Each stage and step brought us both new and greater insights into Christian Science. So now, looking back, I am especially grateful that my son didn't just wake up after the perceived injury 2 years ago feeling all better. Rather, God graced us in such a way that we were able to see the nothingness of his back injury. Then we were able to experience the true harmony in his life that could not be defeated by not getting recruited to the college of his choice because of the disruptions to his athletic achievements. Then we were blessed by his growing maturity and insight in science, coupled with his understanding that things don't always work out as human willpower wants. Rather, with a reliance on God, things always work out perfectly, and often in ways we could never imagine. In the darkest hours of my son's despair, he started attending Sunday school at the Plainfield Church at my suggestion and the recommendation of his practitioner. I am so grateful to the wonderful Sunday school teachers who have patiently guided his education and the practitioner who supported him and me on this journey. I know they are flooding him with love and truth. I've had several joyous Sundays this summer when I heard my son on the phone from his bedroom connecting to the Sunday school at Plainfield without my suggesting it. And then I was especially happy when I learned that he called in again this Sunday from his dorm room. Truly, he has realized the need for active Christian Science as his being, and that is the greatest joy I can experience as a parent. God is ever-present strength with my son, with my family, and with all families. Thank you again for the readings. Have a good night.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio, go ahead.
Good evening. Recently, I began experiencing pain and swelling in a foot that was injured earlier this year. During that time, I was very grateful for practitioner support to remove the sense of fear and apply the truth of Christian Science. This time again, I called my practitioner, who told me that first of all, this was animal magnetism, that I would be breaking the first commandment and dishonoring God. I am his perfect reflection, and God was not reflecting this in any way. From Collectania by Mary Baker Eddy, from a prayer, she states, "Truth says, I have perfect eyes, perfect heart, perfect limbs, etc. All there is to me is like God, like perfection. We should discard mortal mind judgment and pray for the Christ mind. It is our human will or judgment that argues we can't do so and so. There is no reason why we may not always demonstrate truth and be well and happy." I'm so very grateful for my practitioners' ever-present support, to God, to Christian Science, and to this church. I pray that through every challenge that comes, there comes the unfoldment through which we step a little higher in our understanding. Thank you so very much for tonight's reading, and I am very happy to be here.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings and music tonight. I'm very grateful to be learning many lessons at this church where pure Christian Science is being taught. One of the many lessons I have been learning is how to say no. And this was not an easy thing for me. For many years I struggled with people-pleasing, worrying about people came first in my life without any understanding of what God wanted for my life. My not saying no was fear-based, a desire to avoid conflict, and a false sense of responsibility. It got me into situations that were unhealthy and went against what I felt was right, and it was exhausting. I also stopped using my spiritual sense. Before coming to Plainfield, I saw the havoc it was causing in my life, physically and mentally. And in search for answers, I did come across a book that had a title, 100 Ways to Say No. This was a good step towards something I needed to learn, but it wasn't until I got to Plainfield and started working with my practitioner here that I began to find out what it meant to put God first. I started to gain moral strength and a greater sense of honesty. Now I'm learning how to listen to God and to be guided in all I say and do by God. I am also learning how to say no to negative habits and negative thinking, and building discipline, which makes me live the life God intended, which is always good and healing. I'm so grateful to be learning to be saying yes to the things of God and to live a life of integrity. I'm very grateful for Christ Jesus, Mary Baker Eddy, and to this church. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell.
Hello and good evening to all. Thank you for the readings. Follow the Father from glory unto glory and our healing music. Tonight I wish to express my gratitude for the Holy Bible and how this church teaches us about the Bible with the lesson sermons each week and the Bible studies. From what I have read, this is Eddy's family with her father reading the Bible, and they did this each day. And as a child, she healed children in her community and even stopped a bully at school. She was healed of injuries from a terrible fall as an adult after reading a passage from her Bible, and went on to study the Bible under God's direction in order to understand how she had been healed, which resulted in our textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. She did this for the benefit of all mankind. Later, in her home, she would read a Bible passage to her students each morning. The Bible has become very special to me, and the other day I read a passage in the chapter of Jeremiah, which when paraphrased says, quote, "All men will be drawn unto me," meaning God. This was like a lightning bolt because I remembered what Christ Jesus said over 600 years later, quote, "And I, when I am lifted up from earth, will draw all men unto me." All men. What a beautiful promise. And thank you, Plainfield Church, for opening up a whole new way of life based on the Bible. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty from California, go ahead.
Thank you for the music and the readings tonight. Tonight I'm very grateful for help from a Plainfield practitioner during a time when I needed to have a dental procedure done. I had gone ahead and talked to her and went ahead and made the appointment, and she gave me an article in Mrs. Evans' book to read. I believe it was on page 15, regarding the healing of a woman's teeth to work with, and also the scientific statement of being. And then on the morning that I had to go in, she talked about the poem, The Deer's Cry, that was sung by St. Patrick and his followers, and they were protected from ambush while they were walking in the forest. And that was so comforting. I listened to the song that was sung at church, and it was just beautiful. The day of the procedure came, and I went into the dentist and sat down. They did whatever they have to do, and the dentist took a look, and he says, "Oh, this will be really easy," and it was. And it was done really fast, and I was out of there. And what was really interesting was there was no after effects from this procedure. And in the past, I'd had some, but this time there were virtually none. And I was really, this is amazing. Anyway, I'm just very grateful for Mrs. Eddy's Christian Science as taught here in the Plainfield Church. And I'm so glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Bruce. I'm very thankful for Christian Science and then how it gives us the true conception of what God is and what He does. Last week, I was involved in something where I needed to be awake and alert so I could do my part. And I could feel myself getting really drowsy and like I wasn't going to do it well. So I made a couple of statements that I know is absolutely true as learned in Christian Science, being God is life, and God is my life. And because God is life, He made me alive to the truth of being. And that was it. Next thing you know, the feeling sleepy and drowsy disappeared immediately, and I did my part by the grace of God. So I'm thanking God, and I'm thanking for the truth that we've learned in Christian Science. Craig.
The music that was given tonight, played tonight, and the readings, they were all very inspiring. I wanted to give gratitude for Mary Baker Eddy's hymns. Sometimes I feel during certain troubles I'm the least spiritual I did, but I give my best. Well, after a watch several nights ago, I had a cough, and I had diligently prayed in the world and church and felt I had given my best, but I had this cough I couldn't get rid of, and I was keeping the whole house up. So at least my wife. So I thought of Mary Baker Eddy's hymn, Mother's Evening Prayer, which I love. And when I read it, I feel like she's there. And I sang it and I to myself over and over again. And Next morning, my wife said, you know, you didn't have any coughs at all last night. There was no trouble. So I said, yep. I sang, I'm pretty sure I sang and worked with Mrs. Eddie's hymn. Then again, the other night, I couldn't sleep at all after a good, I felt, fair watch, good watch. And I stayed for him that, oh, love is our refuge. Only with mine eye can I behold the snare that fall. So everything around us was good, not snaring, not pits. Nobody's falling. And then we were in God. And I stayed with it. And I felt like there was a lot of love there. And I just went on and went right to sleep. I thank God for her leaving us these hymns. They just feel like they leave the presence of her with us and the great love that she had for God. It's power. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary.
Good evening. We have lots to read again tonight. I'm grateful we have a church where we have an abundance of testimonies and expressions of gratitude. This is our church website, Bulletin Board, Massachusetts. Thank you so much for the ongoing Bible studies every other Saturday. Thank you, Mike, for the questions for the September 26th study and for all that everyone shared. I didn't know very much about the Bible at all until I came to this church. I thank this church for waking me up to the realization of who Mary Baker Eddy is in Bible prophecy. For me, this was the missing piece of information that prompted me to accept Christian Science and see how the Bible gives her writings spiritual authority. In Paul Smiley's book, Mary Baker Eddy, The Prophetic and Historic Perspective, is a hidden gem and has been eye-opening to me. A paragraph that stood out is, quote, "The large majority of Christian scientists do not understand Mrs. Eddy's place in Bible prophecy, and therefore Mrs. Eddy's words and works do not carry the authority, importance, and impact to their thinking as they should. Very few scientists have searched the scriptures to find their leader. Without a recognition of Mrs. Eddy's place in Bible prophecy, they will not obediently follow her as discoverer, founder, and leader of this science." End quote. And then Florida. We here in Florida are so grateful to be able to attend a church service that is real and healing. This morning was another wonderful Sunday morning with a thought-provoking roundtable, an inspiring lesson sermon on reality, a lively, joyous solo, My God is Real, sung so beautifully by Faith, Jared, and Bruce, and finally Craig's reading of the scientific statement of being and correlative passage from 1 John. We felt such love when he read it. Thank you all for this bounty of blessed good. Illinois. I am filled with thanks and gratitude for all the healing truths and treatments given during the roundtable this morning, September 27th. It is wonderful to always receive support from fellow church members during our roundtable discussions, Bible studies, and church services. God's angel messages always flow through these activities. And then California. I am so grateful for this morning's roundtable as I am every Sunday. I feel so blessed to be part of this church that starts everyone's week with how good God is and how perfect His child is, and that this is being heard round the world, maybe to someone who has never heard such words. I always look forward to each Wednesday night's testimony service, Saturday Bible study, roundtable, and Sunday service, knowing that I and everyone listening will receive the message God has prepared for each one of us. And then this is from Nairobi, Kenya. She had written and expressed a concern about doing watches and prayers concerning our elections worldwide elections. And so I wrote back and told her how we do watching and prayers, and we have been praying about the elections. And Jeremy instructed Jeremy to send her some on this particular topic. So she wrote back to thank us so much for these watches in connection with the U.S. elections. They are so strong, and I will certainly keep them in mind as I do my daily prayers and watches for these elections. And I love the Blue Book. My husband and I are full of admiration of the work on the website in translating in so many languages. My husband enjoyed the Bible lessons in Hungarian. We often listen to your Sunday service in English. You are a fantastic church. Our family really admires you, and we are pleased that you print works by the early pioneers of Christian Science. I love Carpenter's watches. Thank you so much for sharing, and I will continue to watch with you in connection with these elections. We know God is in control and God governs. And then this is a testimony from California. I would like to express gratitude tonight for our textbooks, the Holy Bible and Mrs. Eddy's writings, Science and Health, with Key to the Scriptures, and prose works. I was commenting to a friend the other day about how I now understood why I wasn't demonstrating Christian Science in the way I wanted to demonstrate it before finding the Plainfield Church. The answer had to do with our textbooks. Both of us agreed that we had never read any of the books through from beginning to end, although for many decades we had read many pages and passages through the study of our weekly lesson. The question came, how could we possibly live and demonstrate Christian Science if we had not read the textbooks upon which our religion was established? I started to see what had happened over the years. When I attended Sunday school, we used the textbooks in connection with the study of the weekly lesson, and I grew up to the lesson for healing thoughts, going to the lesson for healing thoughts. I actually marked the citations of my weekly lesson in the textbook, and most of the time read more than the designated citations when I opened the books. Then the church started offering the Bible lessons with all the citations already printed out in the name of convenience, so that we who were so busy with life could get our lesson. So when we came to a point where the textbooks were no longer needed, the printed version replaced them, I also noticed how at one time I could go to the local bookstore and find Science and Health and other related books on the shelves for sale, and then the time came when I found it hard to find the books because I guess there was no longer the demand for them. When I started working with a practitioner from Plainfield, I was made aware of the importance of reading the textbooks. My practitioner instructed me to read them from beginning to end, and when I finished, to read them from beginning to end again, and then again, for the rest of my life. Each reading would bring a greater spiritual understanding to demonstrate the science. It is important to be obedient to what is righteous, and I am now into my textbooks, reading as much as I can each day, having started from the beginning pages. I am finding so much inspiration and healing truths to apply in my life. Here at Plainfield, I use the printed lesson sermon available for us, but I feel this is okay for me because it is used in the correct way. It is only the start of my study, and not for the sake of convenience. It takes me into my textbooks to read more and search for greater understanding. Plus, the reading of my lesson is always accompanied by my daily reading of my textbooks page by page. Thank you, Plainfield practitioners, for leading and guiding us in the way we need to walk to demonstrate Christian Science. And then Florida. I love this Sunday school insert in this month's Liberator. Thank you, Florence, Shardy, and Linda, for what you are doing with the Sunday school. You can feel the love you put into it. And then a testimony from North Carolina. In Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy begins the section, Key to the Scriptures, with a biblical quote from the book of Revelation that ends with, quote, "Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it." End quote. Over the years, when dealing with difficult circumstances, especially human relationships, I have returned to this verse many times, and always it has given me the courage to pause, stand still, and await the doorway that God inevitably provides for me. It isn't always easy to take that time to pause, but it is exactly where I need to begin. It is in that vestibule, which Mrs. Eddy refers to in her definition of wilderness in the Glossary of Science and Health, where the suggestion of hopeless despair gives way to an ember of confidence that grows expectantly and eventually takes hold of the discordant situation as the, quote, material sense of things disappears and spiritual sense unfolds the great facts of existence, end quote. Answers don't necessarily come suddenly, but in that pause, beholding God's open door, I regain my poise and feel a great comfort and release from the mortal thoughts that would suggest otherwise. And then testimony from Florida. She starts out expressing gratitude for our church and the website, and then she says in Florida, because of the rain and humid weather, they were having a problem with mosquitoes that was very bothersome. And she said that she turned in the Herbert Eustace book, Christian Science's Clear, Correct Teaching, on page 454, this quote, "You do not ignore the various beliefs involved, anatomy, laws of matter, nature, materia medica, etc., but you take them back to the kingdom of heaven by reversing them, and there you find them, all in their true sense, as the activity of God. I realized then there is love in heaven, and so such an idea as that little critter could not disturb me, and I could delete it from my thought. It has been some weeks now, and not only I, but my husband no longer are confronted by them. Thank you, God, Mary Baker Eddy, and the Plainfield Christian Science Church." And then, lastly, this is a testimony or a letter from California. "Greetings from the Smoky Mountains of California. We've had quite a special year here, filled with such sadly entertaining and dramatic circumstances. However, I continue to have wonderful days, enjoying getting to know God better and better. It seems that no matter what comes up needing healing, the current Bible lesson, the daily watch, the daily suggested articles and ideas in audio presented at the Plainfield Church always hold the perfect treatment. I am forever grateful for this and for the genuine love pouring out of this church. Despite the dramatic circumstances of this year that seem to try to knock the world off course, I become increasingly aware of the unreality of that lie, since God is among us and is all good. You have taught me to put God first in all things, and also to know that everything contains God's blessings. The more you look for them and expect them, the more you find. Thank you for sharing these two very important points. This has made life so harmonious despite our current gloomy event. Here in our sweet little community in the Smoky Mountains of California, which is in a very close proximity to a giant wildfire, complete with air so toxic and smoky that outdoors is 100% off limits. We return unscathed. It has been unbelievable for a week or so, and truly unbelievable, and not to be believed, since it is unlike God. Nothing inharmonious can enter being, for life is God, from Mary Baker Eddy. To hold this idea in thought has been a great help. A few times in the past, I've had surprising success with little incidences of handling the weather. That has shown me how to clear the radar and clear the vision in consciousness by mentally unseeing anything unlike God. Anyway, in the middle of this current smoky event, it actually rained yesterday morning, complete with puddles and crisp, clear air for a few hours. It was wonderful to see and a confirmation of God's loving ever-presence. I like the phrase I heard a long time ago, when things go wrong, don't go with them. Anyway, we send much love in our prayers throughout our country and our world, and certainly our dear folks who have been in the line of fire, so to speak, in California. God's presence and power with them. We continue to watch on all of these current events with God's power and presence with us all. Thank you for those readings, beautiful readings tonight. You read in Miscellaneous Writings, the student who heals by teaching and teaches by healing will graduate under divine honors, which are the only appropriate seals for Christian Science. I have thought many times this is how Mrs. Eddy, yes, and also Mrs. Evans taught and healed. She taught